like me. I've received many messages and so many things that, especially to me, I don't want to say anything here. I'm going to sit down with anyone in the LGBT community, especially the L community. We can do a ceasefire agreement, in fact. Hopefully I will be used as human shield. But that's another story for another day. The point I'm making to you is, what is the primary concern that they have? The primary concern is, well, he's against us. I'm not necessarily against any human being, to tell you the truth. Well, he said some things which are against homosexual morality. Well, let me tell you something. If I don't believe that the act of homosexuality is a moral thing, is morally acceptable, well, you don't believe Islam is a morally acceptable thing, or morally correct thing. You think that you be Muslim. If you believe Islam is morally correct, you would be Muslim. That is the truth. So why are you allowed to have a belief which is antithetical to mine, and I cannot have a belief which is antithetical to yours? Surely every ideology, every religion, every idea is a competitor to every other ideology and every idea. Surely that's what it is. And so if someone is a Marxist, they don't believe in capitalism. If someone is a capitalist, they don't believe in Marxism. If someone is a vegetarian, they don't believe in meat eating. If someone believes in meat eating, they don't believe in vegetarianism. Now, that's just a fact. But to say, okay, you're not allowed to speak about what you believe, but we can speak about what we believe, frankly, that goes against liberalism. Because what you're now asking, from your perspective, is that one minority be treated differently to another minority, which is against pluralism and against equality. That's against your worldview, not even mine. So the fact that you tried to protest me to come into this particular college institution is actually a self-defeating policy, self-defeating position. And I will say that if that is allowed to happen once, it will be a slippery slope, and it will happen over and over again. But, as I say, we're allowed to have our positions, and we should be allowed to speak about our positions. There's a difference between dispelling a position and calling for example, some kind of restriction to be placed on certain people. You'll find nothing in my speech, in the past, the present, or the future, of me saying, for example, that we should harm a homosexual, or that we should, treat them in a negative manner. You'll find nothing in my speech that says that. So, if that is the case, then it shouldn't be one rule for one community and another rule for another. That's one point I needed to make. The other point is this. Actually, we have found people from the left wing, quite supportive of the Palestinian cause. And for that, we're grateful. Yes, we are. We are grateful to anybody who is supportive of the Palestinian cause. And this is a point of unity, in fact. Anybody can support the Palestine cause, including people who identify as homosexuals. And we don't have any problem with that whatsoever. In fact, we can agree on that point. Because Muslims are not left-wing, and they're not right-wing, and they're not centrist, and they don't need to be anywhere on the political spectrum of the white man. We don't need to be anywhere on the political spectrum of the white man, because frankly, our morality transcends all of those things, and is different to all of those things. So there are things that we are going to agree on a social level with people who call themselves conservatives. And there are some things which we may agree with people on the left, with people who call themselves liberals. And there are some things which we will agree with the centrists, with people who call themselves centrists. And so, Muslims in this country and throughout the West must establish their own civil rights movement. We have our own independent struggles. And the topmost, or chief most important thing which has been plaguing us is actually the international affairs, the foreign policies of the West. Because as I've just listed, so many people have been killed at the hands of the foreign policy of the West. And then resentment starts to accrue in the imaginations of the Muslim people, and then that leads to radicalization, or it leads to terrorism, or whatever you want to call it. And the Irish understand all about that, because you have seen your fair share of terrorist action here and in Belfast, where I'm going to go after tomorrow. In fact, I was playfully joking with the guys and say, look, I'm going to go speak about Belfast, so I'm going to speak about the need for independence from the British. So we can't be speaking about one kind of occupation, which is the occupation of Palestine through the Zionists, and not address the other kind of occupation, which is the occupation of the British on Belfast and Northern Ireland. They said, why are you going to speak about that? Because I said, I've had enough of the West playing divide and conquer with our lands. It's about time I do the same with theirs. It's about time I become the Lawrence of Arabia. Because with me, they may have expected one kind of radicalism. Islamist radicalism. But maybe I will inspire a completely different strand of radicalism, of a independent kind in Belfast. But that's something else. The point I'm making is, the Irish understand all about it, because frankly, they're the only real example in Europe of people that have been treated like coloured people who are not actually coloured people. If you think about it, they're the brown white people. Because if you think about it, they've been treated just as an Indian maybe has been treated, or some person. I don't think there was any Irish slave trade like that, on that level. But they have been treated like that. That's why I have noticed that the Irish people are very open with the ethnic. I don't know if this is something. My dad married an Irishman. People don't know this. I have family in Ireland. I've come here before. I have an extended family here in Ireland. My sister's half Irish. It's true. And alhamdulillah, Muslim as well. And I was saying to the guys, is there still an issue between? Because I've never understood. Okay, there was a sectarian conflict in Northern Ireland. People were connected to Protestantism because England was Protestant, yeah, and the other group was the Catholics. But now people have become irreligious, right? So they still identify in these ways. There's still a problem like that. But if it's really a sectarian problem between Catholics and Protestants, I have a solution for the people of Northern Ireland. They can all become Muslim, and they can solve the issue in that manner. This is one way they can solve the issue without any bloodshed. And I was looking at a list of countries with the least active military personnel. And I found that Ireland has 6,000 people in the military. I mean, there's gangs in London with more than that. I mean, what the hell is going on? You think this is independence? You've got the United Kingdom next door with 150,000 active military personnel. I've tried it. And you're telling me you're independent with 6,000? No, this is not in full independence. I mean, Hamas has more than that. Hamas has 10 times as much as that. But 6,000. Anyway, the point I'm making is that Ireland really wants independence. They must, in the same way, because I'll be honest, one could argue 6,000. I can understand. I went to Iceland. They don't even have an army, by the way. In Iceland, they do not have an army in Iceland. It's a huge country, but it's geographically they don't have an army. They've subcontracted their fighting to NATO. Yes. I say fine. You can subcontract your fighting to NATO, but at least don't subcontract your thinking to the West as well. And don't fall into the new age colonialism. This is my message to the Irish people. Because the new age colonialism is the colonialism of ideas. It's the colonialism of ideas. Why do we need to take our knowledge productions from England, France, Germany, and America? Because these are the powerhouses of the Enlightenment, for example. Italy, you can argue for the Renaissance. Why those countries? Criticality now must be expanded for the Irish people. And I think it has been, and that's why the Irish people have been so staunch on the pro-Palestinian issue, because they realise the game of politics that is being played. But the next step is to realise that now it's not just a game of politics, but a game of ideas. There's no reason for us to take for granted Western ideas. I was looking at the map recently. The world map. Yes, I was looking at the world map. And in the world map, Greenland is huge. Okay? Greenland is huge. And I was looking at it with my children. And they pointed to what's that country? That's Greenland. It's a huge country. It's the same size as Africa. The whole continent of Africa. I said, that can't be right. So I did a bit of research. And I realized that Greenland is actually 14 times smaller than the continent of Africa. But it's represented on the map as the same size. And this was a big shock for me. It really was. I said, how dare they do this? They're lying about geography. Now, there's a reason for this. I mean, they did this because it was easier to navigate with that kind of distortion. But what that meant was, when you look at the world map, America, the United States of America, and Canada and Russia, they look much bigger than they actually are. They're not actually that big at all, by the way. I'm not sure if you noticed. So I started looking at the maps which are to scale. And I had a paradigm shift. My God, Africa's a huge continent. It's so huge. America, the United States can fit in there so many times. Can you imagine this? And you know, it's a very small country. I know Ireland is, but no, even more shocking to me was the United Kingdom. It was nothing. It was like nothing. Probably the 50th biggest country or something like that in the world. Quite a small country, frankly. And I thought, wow, they distorted how big these countries were. And then I thought to myself another question. Why have they put the European countries on the top? I mean, if the Earth is a ball, and it's round, and we don't know where the top and the bottom of the universe is. So at least have some maps with South Africa at the top. I mean, at least have some of them. There's no map I've ever seen. In fact, if I see a map with South Africa at the top, I consider that to be some kind of joke. But when you flip the map over, and you make it to scale, but immediately, the relevance of the West is reduced. It's much smaller and it's on the bottom. It's like more, the relevance is reduced. And I thought, wow, what a colonial tactic. Even in geography lesson, they try to distort the map. Even in geography, honestly, genuinely. And I thought to myself, the world view in which we are looking at the world in is very Western. It's so hard to shake off this Eurocentrism. To the point where if we think about countries, we think of a certain shape, a certain size, and a certain direction. Now, what I want to say is that just as we have been fooled and duped into the relevance of the West on the map, we've also been fooled and duped into the theories of justice and morality of the West. We've been duped in the same exact way. And we take for granted certain things in the West, which are considered to be good and bad and evil and so on. Just and unjust, right and wrong. Theories of equality, theories of justice, theories of democracy and liberalism. All of these things, they are distorted notions with no evidence and nothing to underpin or undergird them, except for the sword. The sword that has been yielded and used in order to spread colonial liberalism and democracy. This is the real reason why people, when they think of right and wrong, they think of Western notions of right and wrong. It's been forced upon us. These distorted notions, in the same way as the map is a distortion, so too are the moralities. Because the question would be, what are the evidences for these moralities? For example, liberalism. Classical liberalism as a philosophy, which is the dominant religion now of the Western world, through which and by which most moralities of the West are either accepted or rejected. If I were to ask a simple question, what is the evidence of classical liberalism? Of social liberalism? What is the evidence for humanism? Well, you can do whatever you want, so long as you don't harm anyone else. That the individual is sovereign. What are the evidences for this thing? Well, John Stuart Mill, for example, tried to provide some evidences. But none of those evidences fulfilled the criteria of empiricism, which he himself was. He was an empiricist. None of the evidences that he provided were conclusive evidences, or in fact acceptable evidences. For example, in his book, on utilitarianism, he tried to provide evidence for what he called the principle of utility. It says, why is it the case that the hedonistic calculus is correct, that you can do whatever you want, and that it should be the most good and most pleasure for the most number of people? He couldn't provide any evidence for that. So what I'm saying to you is, the Palestine issue. The Palestine issue is just a symptom of a greater system that's happening now, which is a system of Western domination. If this system of Western domination, which exports ideas, manipulates people by the sword, and through ideas, and through Hollywood and Netflix and these things, all of it together, if it wasn't in place, then we could easily identify the problems and reject them. But we are being manipulated. We are being manipulated. Because we are being forced to accept ideas without evidence. because it's emotionally close to them, sentimental to them, and I understand that. Really, I think it's more about Irish identity to accept the Palestine issue than it is about Palestinian identity or Muslim identity or anything else. Because the moment the Irish people start speaking like the other Westerners, like Piers Morgan and this one and that one, and trying to hold the stick from the middle, and try and make justifications for the rogue state of Israel, the moment that happens, and they know that almost nothing unique, nothing differentiates them from the rest of the Europeans. Nothing differentiates. They've become like the rest of the Europeans. Right now, there's so much